I'm gonna presume that started.
Yeah, it started.
All right, no, it says starting.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh wow, we could have always just used that, but no, it's already on 10 seconds, so it's been going a bit. We just didn't know about it. Right. Boom, 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 boom.
Was that the? Did you do the
That
countdown?
was the countdown.
Was that not countdown? Good girl. Lovely. Right. Okay. Yeah. Jesus. We are the FPL the Good Guys FPL rather. Yeah.
Countdown can be our theme tune. I quite like countdown.
Yeah.
You want to do it again?
We're not happy with that. That was alright.
You aren't happy with countdown?
I think we just go. I think we just start from there. I think we just carry on. Do you think?
Yeah, we're not allowed to reset, Dan. You just keep going.
Okay.
Riveting FPL content for all the viewers so far. Let's get on with it.
Right, well, welcome to our first official podcast of Gameweek 0, aka pre-season. We are joined here today by me, BV, a last season 10k rank, the best one here. The year before last season, the previous season, I finished 90-something K, 98k I think it was in the end, and that was basically my first full season of FPL. Who's next?
I'll go.
Yeah, go.
So, hello everyone, my name's Joe. I ended up at 33k at the back end of last season. I was winning the Good Guy League for a little while, not for ages. I mean, I think Dan, you were ahead for like a week in the middle somewhere. But hey, as it all shook out, we've got BV there at 10k. I finished at 33. A year's gone by in the past. I definitely improved last season. I think the year before I was 900 and something k. Was it that low? It was pretty bad. And then before that, I think it was 250k. So a bit of topsy-turvy, to be fair, but I feel like I know what I'm doing now. So yeah, good season ahead, hopefully.
And now it's me. I'm 100k. Now, I'm the most experienced FPL player of the Good Guys. Last season was 100k. Now, I think I could have done a bit better, but, Salah's on, that back end of the season cost. But we moved. Year before that was a little peak at 3.35 million. But I quit the league.
Yeah, you gave up, to be fair. You gave up.
And then I had some when I was a bit of a casual player for like 17, 18, 18, 19 and 19, 20. Some, 100, like 370k to 750k. Casual.
Jeez, 300. 300k. Yeah, I didn't think you got that high.
I'm the best of the Good Guys this year, and I think I can do it. So, I hope.
Talking from someone that's always come third whenever we've had this league. He's always been in last. Yet, he's going to be the best.
Oh, no, yeah.
Wow.
Then you'll find out how good my draft will be. Those players, they're gonna jump out the blocks flying.
I mean, it is third time lucky. So for both of you, because obviously the last 2 years the positions have been fairly nailed. I've always been first. Joe's always been second, and you've always been last. I'm not going to drop a third there.
Yeah, bronze medal position. It is on the podium. It is a medal. But I want to improve. It's first place or nothing.
Well, I think in the end, I mean, we were in like a wider league of, what was it, sort of 20 or so in the end? And did you come third or fourth in the end? Did that other guy overtake you?
I was third for so long, though, and then
Oh, wait, we haven't actually said what the purpose of this video is yet, have we?
No, yeah, educate them, Joe.
Yeah, so essentially we're going to show what our current Game Week 1 drafts are. Obviously, there's a little bit of time before the season kicks off. So there could be injuries, different transfer bits and bobs, which affects the drafts that we've got at present. But this is what we have. We've had a look through stats. We've used our own sort of know-how and guile, and I don't know if anyone's got any interesting differentials they want to throw out there. But we'll get to that. But yeah, that's essentially the essence of this video. We're going to show you our drafts that we've got at the moment.
Essentially, we're here to educate you so you can do even better. even if one of the people educating you might have done worse than you did last year. You know, where to bring your hard-hitting stats, guile, and a kind of instinct that you just money can't buy.
Well, money isn't buying it because it's all free content to them.
Yeah.
But still. Right. Should we give some context to obviously what a draft is? A draft is just our sort of team that we're planning on.
We'll give just a brief sprinkle for the newcomers, because I imagine a lot of you folk, will know what it is, but we're inclusive.
Who thinks they can give a good explanation of FPL terms that the normal newbie might not know?
Oh man, probably not me, to be fair. I'm not very
I'm the most experienced.
I reckon maybe what happens when we say a word which we think they might not understand, someone just goes, oh.
Yeah, I think we
Description.
back the gang. I think we back the viewers. Well, yeah, I reckon so.
Right,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Just thinking of the wags. That might be a segment to come.
Yeah, you've got a lot to look forward to, And I don't want to drop too many hints, but there's an excellent goalkeeper analysis video coming any day.
Yeah, look out for that. Actually, is that brewing down? Oh, you might as well plug it while we're here.
Oh yeah, well, I have got an exquisite FPL video comparing all 20 goalkeepers, fixtures. It's going to be a cracker. It's a service to the FPL community. And, luckily this is still at the start of the podcast, so you just might be hearing what I'm saying now. Fucking check that. Check it out.
Lovely.
All right.
Right. Who backs their draft to go first?
Baron, you've got a few drafts for us, haven't you?
I've got a few drafts, so I don't know whether it's worth me going first or last, because I can show you all the drafts, and we've already run through yours, which you guys might cover some of my drafts.
Oh, go on. I reckon we should do Joe, start with the middle good guy, then me, and then we'll save I don't want to say best.
So people might sort of listen to mine, then skip yours and listen to that.
Yeah. That's about right.
The retention curve, you'll see. Wow, we started off all right. I mean, the dip was horrendous in the middle. We really pulled it back.
All right,
come on then, Joseph.
Come on, Joe.
Come on, him. Let's figure this.
Oh, also, my name's BV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone wondering, if you can't read for the visually
the illiterates. So for the audio people, because podcast people are blind, because you can't see on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
But you gotta remember I'm BB.
Oh dear. Right. that shouldn't have been on the screen. That's okay.
Oh, where did that come from?
All right, so hopefully you can all see this. This is the draft I'm currently sat on. It's about half an hour's thinking this evening that's led me here. I've done the classic rattling through a bunch of different drafts and put in loads of different players at different stages. But this is what I'm at now. So for those of you who might not be listening via YouTube, my two... should I run through sort of like who I've got on the pitch and then the bench? Should I do it in that sort of way?
Yeah. Let's go position by position.
All right. So in between the sticks, I've gone for Alisson. I've got a back four of Trent Alexander-Arnold, João Cancelo, Kieran Trippier, and Reece James. My midfield four is Bukayo Saka, Mohamed Salah, Marcus Rashford, and Leon Bailey, with a strike partnership of Gabriel Jesus and Erling Haaland. So it's a 4-4-2 that I've kicked off the season with, or at least I'm planning on doing at the moment. I've got just a 4-0 backup goalkeeper in Steele. I've got Neco Williams as my fifth defender, Andreas Pereira as my fifth midfielder, and I think it's Liam Greenwood, right, as my third striker.
Liam or Sam?
Is it Sam? I think it is. It's Sam. It's definitely not Mason. I think it is.
We can't say that name anymore.
Yeah.
You can reference it lightly, As long as
it's Greenwood. He's bench fodder. Bench fodder. I guess that's a term we can describe. That's a nice.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bench
Question. What
fodders.
is bench fodder, Joe?
So bench fodder is, it's not even someone who you plan on getting any points. He's just the cheapest person you can possibly have, and they're there to allow you to spread your budget across the rest of your team, or direct more funds into a particular position. So Greenwood is a perfect example. Third on my bench. I don't plan on him ever getting on my pitch, so hence he is bench fodder.
Because obviously you only use your subs go in order. You can't pick the one that comes on. So third on the bench. It's only unless you have 3 players injured or suspended within 1 week in your team that Greenwood will ever come on, which is very, very unlikely.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, it might have been slightly more likely in the last couple of years, what with COVID and whatnot, and fixtures getting sort of left and right, but that's less likely to be a factor these days, especially now at the beginning of the season where you'd like to think all the players we pick aren't going to be injured or things like that. So yeah, for now,
ideally.
Also, there's the 5 sub rule coming into the Premier League this season. Where it was 3 substitutes the previous Premier League seasons. Now there's 5. So you think of like cameos, you think of the Pep roulettes and all that. You'd imagine there'll be more cameo appearances towards the 80th minute, 85th minute when Pep just sticks on Mahrez and pisses you off.
So that sort of diverts us actually to one of the sort of not issues, but sort of biting points with this draft is: do you worry about any minutes for these players? Are these all nailed players? Are they all players that are going to start week in, week out?
Not entirely. I mean, we've got a Leon Bailey. This isn't really much of an order that we're going with, I suppose, in this way. But the main man who I've got currently in my starting 11, whose minutes are in question, are Leon Bailey. He's doing really quite well in pre-season, which is why he's earned himself a slot, and he's really quite cheap, which are the benefits for Bailey. But again, he didn't get a great deal of Premier League minutes last season, mainly due to injury. But he started pre-season well, and Gerrard said recently in an interview that if he could pick his Premier League starting 11 now, Bailey's making a very good case to stick himself in there. So he's there for now. We'll see if it appears like he's not going to start as we get closer to that elusive Gameweek 1 deadline. He's there for now.
Not to hint at my own team, but I do back Bailey as a choice. I've also got Bailey in mine, and picking on Steven Gerrard's words is what sort of sold me Bailey recently, because he's done quite well in pre-season, scored a few goals. He is first on my second in my midfield actually after Salah, but he's second most nailed for BB. But actually maybe even you've got more of a minutes risk with someone else in your team is what I feel.
Do you reckon?
Erling Haaland.
I was thinking Erling Haaland would be the second one. Yeah, his minutes are a bit in question. I can't remember exactly what Pep said in his interview. Did he say it's going to take him a few weeks for him to get regular minutes or something?
Yeah.
You tell me
about scratch or something like that. It's going to take him a while to get over injury and fitness, and just to make it to being a week in, week outer. And by then, it could even be Champions League season.
Yeah, and of course, there's always, you got to consider when a player comes from the Bundesliga. Sure, Haaland is an exquisite player, and you got to back him to do bits. And in the Champions League, he smashed it. But we can't say we haven't been burned by a Timo Werner before. Comes over from the Bundesliga at the start of the season, you think, wow, this guy is great, and then he doesn't perform. And then week after week, he just erodes your self-esteem. You really got to think about things.
Haaland's no Timo Werner in that respect, surely. He's quite clearly an elite talent, I think. He's performed on all the stages he's been presented with. So I think in terms of if Haaland got good minutes, I don't think many people doubt that he's going to have really, very good success at City. So he's in how many people's teams these days? More than 50% of people's teams. And that's for good reason if he were to get minutes. But obviously that's in question, which makes him a shakier pick. So maybe you switch from a Haaland to a Kane. That's something that I could do. Or maybe pump some money into the midfield instead and go for Heung-min Son. They're 2 easy switches from Haaland you can do before the game kicks off if it turns out it's not looking like he's going to get a great deal of minutes. But should I run through the rest of my team, or are you going to just sort of pick through people as we go along?
Go for whatever you fancy.
Yeah, wherever your heart takes you, man.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go back to goalkeeper, I think, because I've gone for Alisson. In between the sticks. Now, it's a tough decision as to what to do with my third Liverpool slot. So I think everyone is going to go for a Salah and a Trent. They're really quite nailed. They're really good value for money. Salah's the big point scorer. You'd expect him to kick the season off well, and Trent's just Trent. There's not really much more that needs to be said about that. But a lot of people are debating between. Sorry, what was that?
For the others is Alexander Arnold on here. People that didn't know. Sorry, not to cut you off.
Yeah, it's alright, that's fine. Yes, it's Diaz and Robertson is the debate for a lot of people as to who their third Liverpool slot could be. As someone who's had really terrible history with goalkeepers, I never seem to have the right one at the right time. I figured this year I'm probably going to go for the premium goalkeeper route, or at least just change the way I've been doing it, because I've just picked a mid-range goalkeeper and just let him sit there in the past. But Alisson, I think he's the best points per million player in the game, as in points that he got last season for the price that he is now. I think he's right up there at the top, which is obviously good value for money. I think he was the best scoring goalkeeper in the game last season, which naturally means that you'd expect him to be right up there again. And Liverpool conceded the least expected goals conceded last season, which is obviously good for a goalkeeper. And Alisson himself, I think his post-shot expected goals conceded, I can't remember exactly how you say that stat, but essentially the expected goals that Liverpool faced, that were the amount of goals they actually conceded were fewer, which highlights that Alisson is really quite a good goalkeeper. He saves more shots than he's expected to. Is a good thing for Alisson. Another good thing about Alisson is he gets a lot of bonus points, which you wouldn't expect for a player who plays in a team which don't concede many shots, because they won't get as many saves as what you'd expect anyway. But Alisson managed to get himself some nice bonus points, which is another benefit. And I just sort of was thinking, is it worth spending the extra 1.5 for the other Liverpool slot to get Robertson instead? I don't know, because Robertson didn't outscore Alisson by a great deal last season. So I've gone for Alisson. There's, that's my sort of main differential, I suppose, and it's in goal, so it's not particularly exciting.
You could look at the if you click on the little information icon to see what points he's been scoring in previous seasons. Just to show the viewers who might be a little curious about the Alisson option. What's he scored in previous seasons? Can you do it on FPL.team?
You can look at last season's, but you can't really look at previous year on year.
Yeah, fair play. It's not the same as fantasyfootball.com. That's okay. That's okay. You can.
Though I suppose the downside to an Alisson is he's expensive. There's probably going to be a better value pick as the season goes on in goal. The Nick Pope for one is one that I've had in a lot of my drafts. A lot of people are picking Edouard Mendy. There's quite a lot of people picking Raya from Brentford as well. There's a lot of arguments to be had for a lot of different goalkeepers, but I've burned in the past by cheap and mid-range goalkeepers. So I think this season I'm going to spend a bit big, and I've gone for Alisson in between.
I mean, you points dodged last year. You just got all the keepers that were good, and then immediately went into a bad run of form once you picked them up.
Yeah, I mean,
so if anything, we should avoid Alisson, Dan. This is just a sign.
This guy has a bit of a curse with goalkeepers going on.
The
so
goalie curse.
Maybe viewers do not buy Alisson. This is a red flag. I've seen red flags in my time, but the shade of that.
I've literally set out the store for Alisson for the past 3 minutes, and is definitely don't pick Alisson.
I mean,
on behalf of the viewers, I would quite like to ask. Obviously, I'm sure some people have seen Rashford at 6.5 million. Could be a bargain option, but Rashford hasn't really performed in recent seasons. Perhaps you could explain how come you pick Rashford? What's his
I backed the United boys, man. I really do think in pre-season they were on it.
Do you think Ten Hag is the man?
Yeah, I think it's fairly evident from I mean watching highlights even of Man United's pre-season games that there's just a bit of buzz, there's a bit of electricity in their attacking play, which was just lacking massively towards the back end of last season. You know, in the Ranić era, they just looked like a wet flannel in attack. You know, it was just rubbish. But the fact that Martial's even getting on the score sheet is, you know, it shows how much improvement there's been. Sancho and Rashford look electric on the wings. I mean, Sancho is a bit more of a wait and see because he's a touch more expensive. And as well, he's not Prem proven. Whereas Rashford, I think only a couple of seasons ago, I can't remember exactly the points tally, but it was 170 something, maybe 180 something. And he was priced up at 9 million. So I think there's a good chance, well, not a good chance, but there's a chance that he makes an absolute mockery of that 6.5 million price tag. So I think that's why he's good value at that price, especially if you look at the other options that are there. That, you know, they're slightly less explosive, maybe.
You don't think Sancho is Prem proven? He literally played the whole season.
But he didn't do well last season, though. You know, he didn't hit his Bundesliga heights.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah,
Prem
but
proven
he's never going
to get goals and assists in the Prem.
He scored a few. He got a few assists, and that was in a poor Ranić team. That was
No, and I think it's
he outperformed Rashford last season.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, I guess Rashford probably had less minutes, but no, Sancho was better. Rashford was terrible last season. Yeah, there's no getting away from that. But yeah, no, I guess Rashford's cheaper. There isn't money in my team for someone in Sancho's price range, and would I pick him anyway? I don't know. I wouldn't be as sure. I think Rashford's just got a bit more. I don't know. Actually, it's close. It's really close. I think if they were both the same price, I'd have a decision to make. But Rashford being cheaper just makes it fairly. You know,
Yeah. I mean, Sancho is the better choice in my opinion. But it's then, is he a better choice with $1 million in the bank as well? And that's when it comes down to probably not, because Rashford is still at least as nailed as Sancho, sort of. And there's a wait and see and just see how it goes with him.
I think. Aside from that, the rest of my team is fairly template-ish.
How about,
I won't wait.
You know, there'll be some people seeing that Jesus come over to Arsenal. You know, it looks like he'll be a lot more nailed. I mean, he's going to be the number 9, you'd have to imagine. However, you know, I'm sure some people have got question marks over Jesus' finishing ability. You know, can he make good of these high XGs that we've been seeing? You know, what do you make of that?
Well, I think a lot's being made of Jesus being an XG underperformer. I don't think, from what I've seen, it's that bad. And as well, looking at that, as well as looking at the pre-season highlights that we've seen so far, he's been really quite good. And he's the kind of striker that will fit perfectly in Arteta's system. You know,
I'm pretty sure he's the worst underperformer on XG out of all forwards in the past 2 seasons, or something like that. Yeah, he's underperformed by 17 goals or something like that across the past 3 seasons. But that was in obviously a high XG creating City team.
Yeah, and one of you guys want to Google that as well whilst I've got my screen share. I guess that'd be some useful deets to have. How much Jesus underperformed as XG? I don't know if that's something you can...
Yeah. I'll be on it. You just, well, you know, that's your team up there. You just talk.
Well, anyway, yeah. I mean, he goes through phases, Jesus. I remember even at City, I think he got a 20-pointer, didn't he, last season or something? So, yeah, he's proven to be inconsistent in the past, but I think that might correlate as well to his game time. I just back him, I think, and as well, his ownership is really quite high. So if he does well, then it's going to hurt you quite badly. I mean, what's his ownership of? Nearly 60% or something in and around that.
For Jesus still.
Jesus, yeah.
I have found that on Twitter, the XG philosophy, you know, shout out these guys. Gabriel Jesus has scored 58 goals from 76.68 G in the Premier League, an underperformance of 18.68. Now, I don't think he's too bad at assisting. I think he has played on the wing before, so I think if he was a winger, I'd kind of almost lean into him a bit. But he is going to be their number 9. Now, you would expect him to beat Lacazette. Not that that's saying too much, because Lacazette's really been quite dog.
He was an option, Lacazette, for a bit last season.
He was, and I had him for a bit, and he disappointed me each game week.
No, I don't. Yeah, well, I suppose that's really quite stark, that data. It makes him, seem really quite a terrible option when you put it that way. But no, I think his pre-season form's been really quite good. And I just think he's the right kind of player for Arteta. I think he could do quite well. And I think he's the best at that price bracket as well.
I think you've just got to back the fact that he's going to get minutes, and you just see he's guaranteed to start pretty much every game. His only other challenger is Nketiah.
In an improving Arsenal side, passing around that Arteta ball, if Arsenal can do some free-flowing stuff with him being nailed on, number 9 up top, it's a tactical risk, it's because he is 9 mil. So if he does
he's 8 mil
running, you're gonna see good value for money at that 9 mil price bracket. But obviously
he's 8 mil, Dan.
Oh shit, he's 8 mil.
He's 8 mil, man. He's 8 mil.
Where's even better value there?
He's even cheaper than I thought.
He's decent at 8 mil. I think he's probably underpriced. I reckon he is a 9 mil.
Yeah, he's not bad at 8 mil. I thought he was 9.
He's the same as Saka. Would you rather have, if you had to only go for one, who would you go for, Saka or Jesus?
Saka is the best player Arsenal has. He's the jewel in their crown. His numbers and his underlying stats are getting better year on year. His XG plus XA is like second. No, it's the best out of the people at his price bracket. So when you take over premiums, it's the highest out of the 8.5 mil or below options this year. I think Jesus is better than Lacazette. So if he can boost his assist numbers, because his XG has been higher than his assist, I have a lot of love for Saka. And I will say to the viewers, I had Saka for quite a lot last season. I actually got in on slightly before he became cool. And when I was taking heat in the chat, I was talking about his ball progressions. I've seen a lot of development in Saka. I back him.
But I just think he's a bit boring. He's just a bit boring, man. He's just a bit like Jesus is exciting.
Jesus is. It's something to talk about. It's exciting. Saka is definitely very template, but I think there's a reason for that.
I think he's absolutely nailed in my team. Saka, I think he's by far and away the best 8 mil option in my eyes. He's on pens. He plays the most minutes. I mean, to be fair, he's most likely on pens, actually, because Martinelli took one off him last season, didn't he? But, Saka will probably take the pens.
How do you feel about saving 2 mil and going Saka to Martinelli?
Martinelli, his game time is massively, especially with 5 subs as well. Smith Rowe is going to come on for him every game, probably.
You don't think Smith Rowe is going to come on for Saka as well? He lost minutes.
Saka's nailed, man.
But Saka's
quite a star player. And he's young, English.
He's nailed.
He's the jewel in the crown.
But I think Martinelli and Jesus and Odegaard are nearly as nailed as... He's obviously going to start every single game, I get that. There's not many times that it's going to be a front three of Smith Rowe and Martinelli and Odegaard and Jesus rather than Saka. But I do think, unless I know that he's on penalties week in, week out, I don't know if I lean towards Saka as being someone that's incredibly more worth it than a Martinelli.
Well, we'll see who you've got on your team, and you can back that or agree with that a bit more. I think the one last thing I want to point out with my team, I've realised we're spending quite a lot of time here, would probably be Kieran Trippier in defence. I think the reason I've gone Trippier ahead of some of the other interesting 5 mil options like your Doherty's or your Matty Cash. Trippier didn't play a great deal of minutes last season. When he did come in, I think he played 4 games before he broke his toe or his foot or something. But in those games, he scored a free kick and he kept a couple of clean sheets in there as well. I think that's right. Forgive me if I'm just chatting rubbish there.
I don't know if they kept a clean sheet, but he did score some free kicks.
Yeah,
the creativity went a lot through Trippier because he got injured after he came in January. I think after only a handful of games, he did get injured again. But yeah, I do think, because I can back the Trippier.
Yeah, so I suppose that is a risk with Trippier that he gets re-injured or maybe has his minutes managed, but he's playing in pre-season. He's on, a lot of set pieces, whether it be direct free kicks or corners. From open play, he's obviously a threat as well from fullback, whipping those excellent crosses in that he's got in his locker. And Newcastle are really quite a good team, I think.
Yeah,
Post Eddie Howe, they were 4th in the league, I think, right?
Yeah, the defence improved tremendously too. He's doing a real good job.
The defence improved on XG, but I don't know if they actually kept many clean sheets.
No.
And have you seen their fixtures to come? I mean, the fixtures aren't... Go to the little eye on Trippier, Joe. Let's see their fixtures defensively.
Sure.
So, Everton...
Ah.
Okay, right. Nottingham Forest is the first game. That's fine. Nottingham Forest and Brighton is probably fine. But then that City game, you don't want to be playing Trippier.
Yeah. You're cowering him there.
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's bad. It's Man City. But I don't think it's one that you're like, I want to... Because Newcastle are quite good at football. Like, they're all right these days. He'll probably get 2 points or 1 point, but they're a good team that can upset the odds. I mean, they came 4th from Eddie Howe onwards last season. Like, that's better than most of the rest of the teams in the league, obviously. I don't think you don't pick him because of it. I think he's definitely worth the price tag.
Okay, but do you not think he's worth the price tag? Like, maybe, is it worth avoiding that Man City and Liverpool game and then bringing him in later? So as in picking someone with much better opening fixtures and then getting him at that.
As well, because of the World Cup and the early wild card that people will be dropping probably in and around, the range you see on screen here. You're probably best off looking at these earlier fixtures. So yeah, there's definitely an argument for what you're saying, Baron, but I just back Trippier.
Wolves, Brighton and Nottingham Forest. I mean, I'll talk about this more when we get on to mine, because this gets into the fixture difficulties ratings that I made, but I'll explain that in more detail when it gets on to me. But I definitely think there is value in the fixtures here. But,
I mean, they're good from a defensive point in terms of those three, but and then if you're looking for hauls from Trippier as in a clean sheet and an attacking return, I don't know if he's going to get an attacking return against Brighton and Wolves. In terms of, obviously, he's got potential there. That Nottingham Forest game is a really good game. But then Brighton at home, well, Brighton away for Newcastle. It's just going down that wing. I don't know if he's there in that back four against the wing backs of Brighton. I think they'll push him back quite high. He'll stay solid.
Brighton might not have Cucurella. That could be a place to attack.
I have heard, though, that Potter said apparently Cucurella's quite happy at Brighton. Obviously, we'll see what moves develop, but Cucurella could stay, man.
I mean, they are holding out. They don't want to cave to Pep. But, yeah, but I think as in those tougher games, I can see the appeal of a Nick Pope because I know, even though in the City and Liverpool game he's guaranteed saves, but I don't know if Trippier will be getting up the pitch. But obviously you've got the fact that Trippier's on free kicks, so you've always got that to get him up the pitch.
And he's quite good at them as well. It's not just like when Eric Dyer was on them and he was just spooning into the crowd all the time. He's got evidence he's really quite good.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Right, I think that about wraps it up.
I think we move on. Yeah, move on from this. Daniel.
Right,
that will work.
That's not me. Right, well, I'll share my screen. Start sharing, yes, please.
Right.
Wait, am I already sharing?
Can
you see me? Screen?
Yeah, I can see you, Dan.
Right, now, there are a couple plays I might change before I get into this, just off the bat. Kane, I'm going to talk about my players that I'm on the fence for here first, because I think it makes sense.
Could you read your for the podcast listeners, just from
the
top, just for
excellent now. Point, Baron. BV. Right, okay. So, we have got, currently, some players subject to change. Henderson, in between the sticks. A starting back five of Reece James, Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Trippier, and Perisic. We've got a midfield starting four of Saka, Salah, Foden, and Neto. We've got Kane up top, and then we've got a bench of Undav, and then some bench fodder options of Greenwood and Colback. and we've got Olsen as our backup keeper. Again, bench fodder. Now, the players that I'm a bit sceptical over, I have had real debates over Kane or Haaland. Now, actually, when you were saying earlier about Haaland maybe needing some time to be integrated into the team and being burned with some foreign transfers before. Now, Haaland's an exquisite player, but, in terms of being Prem proven, Kane is almost the epitome of that, along with a few other elite group of players. And Conte's a great manager. They're doing good stuff. So, I'm currently leaning on Kane, but that could change. Perisic, he feels like a real poison chalice to me, because the bitch about Perisic is Conte. If you saw last year, not in last year, but when he was under Conte in Syria, and Conte had 5 subs available, he did get substituted off sometimes, but in the 58th, 59th minute, and for the newer viewers or newer to FPL, your defenders need to get past the 60th minute to register any clean sheet bonuses. So getting subbed off in the 59th minute, that's hugely detrimental. So there is some concern there, but he has been a converted winger to left wing back, and we've seen what Conte has done with wing backs before. He transforms them. We look at Victor Moses when he won the title with Chelsea, going from this just kind of lousy player into, a world beater in FPL terms.
I'd love hearing that. Lousy player.
And in Perisic before, in Inter Milan, this is a guy who's here to get goals and assists, and Spurs are pretty good. So he's a bit of a poison chalice pick, but...
Does it worry you, Dan, that he's barely played any minutes in pre-season?
Yeah, I mean, he's far from nailed in my team. I've even actually been debating possibly going to Matty Cash.
You've been dating Matty Cash?
Yeah, man.
Now, I do want to show you something.
Quite a good looking man.
This is a little bit of a teaser to the slide I've done, but I just want to draw your attention to something in particular, so I want to skip past all this.
It's a bit more than a tease, it's the whole video.
But what I did was I came up with my own fixture difficulty ratings, and Joe, you might be intrigued in this too, and we could potentially have a chat about this.
Yeah.
Based on, this is only for defences, because based on the average goals that each team has scored at home and away grounds in the last 2 seasons, so done as average, because, 2 seasons, it's not so much time, like a few seasons ago, a team massively different, but obviously just
what did you find?
I've done that for each team, and then for the promoted teams, I did that, but I kind of multiplied it by a factor to take into account the drop-off that an average promoted team goes from scoring in the Championship to the Premier League. Now, because Fulham were so free scoring, Fulham at home, or, Fulham at the home ground is actually been denoted as a red in the fixture difficulty, which is kind of some shit, because this Liverpool here, this 1.63, that is Fulham away. Now, you do think, are Liverpool quaking in their boots at Mitrovic? Probably not, but the maths. So...
You might have a point.
Surprised you didn't use... So did you not use Fulham's season in the Prem 2 years ago?
Nah, because I like to look at the most recent fling.
I thought you averaged this across 2 seasons.
Well, with Fulham in directly before, that might have been an L on my part. But again, then it's combining Premier League with Championship data. Maybe that would have been the way to go, but I'm just a man. But I added them up in an average score. So Man City and Liverpool, and you can even see that here. Like, if we look at them both, exquisite defensive fixtures. Newcastle and Villa, which is why I was thinking about Matty Cash potentially. Because if we look at Villa here,
So what do these numbers mean? As in 1.16, that is the team that they're playing against. That's the average amount of goals they score
per
in
game,
a game.
at whether it's they're away from home or at home.
Right.
Now, the thing is, I also want to talk about Henderson, because Dean Henderson, he is currently in net for me. Now, Nottingham Forest are 14th here, and if we look at them at the bottom on this slide, the fixtures, they're a bit, they're not great. I'm not going to lie, they're not great.
They've got one green down.
Yeah, which is really making me think maybe I jump ship to a Pope. You know, there's a reason people are going for him. And so I could go for Perisic to cash and get rid of Perisic being risky.
Explain what draws you to Henderson, Dan, because you've got some decent analysis for that.
Yeah. I'm going to get into that right now. So I want to draw the viewer's attention to this slide here. Now, this is on the previous 7 FPL seasons. I have looked at the goalkeeper from a promoted team which has scored the highest. And if we look at this, 157 points, 149, 146, 154, 160, you get the gist. There is a proven track record that one keeper out of the promoted bunch, at least one keeper, and with David Raya, he played last game. I'm not sure, I'm guessing injury, but, you know.
Yeah.
Well, his points per game still solid, so, you know, the metric stands. That, looking off the data, it is very, very, very reasonable to assume that one of the promoted keepers, they're going to score great in FPL-wise, and they're going to be a real FPL asset. Now, in terms of why I think that's Nottingham Forest, I think that Nottingham Forest coming back up to the Premier League, I think being a historic club, and it's been a while since they were back, I don't know, I can see a bit of I can see a bit of like when Sheffield United came up and the players were so motivated, first time in the Premier League for God knows how long, and you know they did real well. And Henderson was in net for them then. Henderson I do back as a good keeper, which always helps, and especially for save points. And the thing with Nottingham Forest is the second half of last season in the Championship, the form was actually the best in the Championship, or certainly the best out of the promoted teams. There might have been one other team that had better form. But I think they had a slow start to the Championship last season, but then they really clicked into gear, and that kind of shows here. So for all that metrics, if I go back onto my team now, because I'm done with these slides, if I can go off that, please.
Was it just me whose audio cut out just then? Sorry, was it just me?
Yeah, it was just you, Joe. Jimis, that was an interesting point, Dan, about how Henderson was in goal for Sheffield when they came up promoted, because he actually did. He did pretty well. I remember. Obviously, I don't think many people had him because of Lord Lundstrom. But
so right now in my team, the only reason I have a question mark over Henderson is because there's better fixtures to jump on. And with, I think there's 3 wildcards this year in FPL, it's reasonable to assume that by game week 10 you could be wildcarding anyway. So if these first 10 game weeks aren't that great, it does make sense perhaps jumping on a Pope. And then in that case, I might go down from Perisic to a cash, just because Perisic, I think there's high reward, but there's also high risk, depending on whether you get fucked over by the rotation situation. But
I also think if you were happy backing Nottingham Forest defensively, if you back that you think that they will be all right defensively,
well, I think their keeper will be.
You don't think their defence will be?
The thing with these promoted teams or the lower in the table is the great thing the keepers have going for them is the save points. The defenders, you know, they get less clean sheets, but defenders don't get save points either. So save points can make up quite a lot of, you know, potentially even like a third of one of these lower league table goalkeepers' overall points tally. You know, they're a big deal cumulatively.
But Dan, for something interesting especially with Neco Williams, who will be playing Forest at 4.0, they play 3 at the back. So Neco Williams, if he plays that, he'll be a right wing back. So there's potential there for more attacking returns, which some would argue could, you know, equal or even better the save points of Henderson maybe.
Yeah, they're both getting whatever comes from a clean sheet. I'm just thinking that Neco Williams could be 0.5 mil cheaper. So, as in, you can still use your backing on Forest, but use it to get 1.5 mil out of Perisic that you could chuck on like a Neto upgrade or anything, even a Foden.
But from my research, it's primarily it makes sense to apply that to defenders too. But what I am very, very confident saying is that based on this, the fact that one of the promoted keepers, season long, maybe not the first handful of game weeks, but season long, at least one of these promoted keepers is going to do very, very well. I do strongly back that will be Forest. So by the end of the season, Henderson is going to be on a great amount of points. You can clip that up and remember that, because that's the absolute God truth. Or I might jump on Pope just for the easier thing.
Yeah.
But currently he's in the team. So I think that mostly goes through with Kane, Perisic and Henderson, some of my players which may be subject to change.
I mean, we may be falling into a trap here and thinking that the fact that keepers are now much cheaper this season than previous seasons means we should go for the premium keepers. But the fact that you can get a top 6 goalie for just 0.5 more in Mendy or Ramsdale does entice me to spend more this season than I would have previously on a 4.5er. Because Henderson might score well, but will he score as well as the others on a point per million?
Yeah. I don't think he'll necessarily come first, but I think he could be. I think it's not even that unreasonable to say that second out of all the keepers by the end of the season, second or third in terms of total.
No, it could happen, because I kind of backed the Henderson shout a little bit. If I were to do like a backup goalkeeper type situation, if I was going to bench boost, I think Henderson would be right up there for me. I think that the fact that because the first half of the season, at the very beginning of the season, of last season, Forest were absolutely rubbish. Like they were really struggling, and then Steve Cooper came in, and they really improved. I mean, that showed in that second half of the season. What did they concede? Like 0.68 goals per game or something. That's really quite good. I know it's the Championship, and they'll have better attackers against them next season. But yeah, no, I do agree that Forest would be the team to back defensively, and Henderson's got acumen of being quite a good Premier League goalkeeper. So no, I don't think that's the worst pick in the world. I actually don't mind that. I think it's quite fun. But it's the fixtures that are a problem.
Yeah.
What are his opening games, Dan? Can you just
click the eye?
Show us his games.
This is the...
Right.
They're not terrible.
Those are the first 10.
So we were just talking about how Newcastle could slap up Forest, or at least keep a guaranteed clean sheet against them, and maybe Trippier would get an attacking return. And then West Ham are a nearly top 6 team. Everton, and that's Everton playing at their own home ground, Goodison Park. And then Spurs, and then City. I'm thinking if you're going to wildcard...
Everton could potentially be okay. Bournemouth, Leeds, Fulham could. I mean, it's not great, but there's some of them which is not great, but could be worse. A lot of fixtures like that, I think. I mean, Tottenham and Man City aren't great. There's no getting around that. Certainly Man City, that's atrocious.
I'll back in a second, lads. I'll just
pray for save points, don't you?
I'm gonna make a claim to I'm gonna make a counter claim, Dan. I think Robert Sanchez at 4.5 mil at Brighton will outscore. Robert Sanchez doesn't get save points. You've got the save point side on Henderson. The fact that he does make saves, but Sanchez can get clean sheets. They're good, Brighton. I'm gonna back that.
Someone worth
Sanchez
discussing, just because I've heard a lot of FPL communities talk about them, is potentially Raya. Now, I think, what do we think about the second season syndrome? This is Brentford's second season in the Premier League. There could be some drop-off. There's a reason it's got second syndrome for a reason. Now, I think he could be okay, but, I think he's not going to be this season's, thing. What do you think?
The reason I'm dodging Raya so far is that Raya, whatever you say, is that I don't know if the new keeper Brentford have signed is going to take his spot, because they've signed another keeper because Raya's got some sort of contract situation or something like that. So they've got 2 4.5 mil keepers priced on FPL, and I don't know which one is going to be the one that starts in goal for them. I mean, Raya should be nailed for them. Should be nailed. And if he does start, I do kind of back them because he was where Brentford were playing out from. He started their attack. He started everything as a ball-playing keeper. And he was sort of the main thing that kept them going, I feel, at the start of the season. And like it's quite correlated their drop-off with his injury. When they had that middle rough patch where we thought they could get relegated last year. Because I think he pumps those long balls up to Tony and Tony chests it down and that's how they start getting playing. But without him, I can't remember the guy that was in goal for them, but the other guy was not as capable with his feet, and you could sort of see they had to change their style of play and they didn't like it. And then I do agree with your second season syndrome in the sense that I think it'll counterbalanced balanced by the fact that Raya's come back. And I would have really backed Brentford if they could hold on to Eriksen and then have that other outlet of way to play. But the fact that Eriksen's gone to United means Brentford could struggle in attack, which could cause more pressure on their defence. But that might also be a way that they solidify at the back and they just see out draws.
Yeah. So Henderson's been discussed. Perisic discussed with that riskiness, and Kane. Trippier, Joe kind of touched on Trippier, and again, if you saw on my PowerPoint, Newcastle are right defensively. I backed them, and we did discuss that.
I think we've discussed all of these, except from why Foden.
James pretty template. Salah's an FPL essential in regards by the vast majority of people. Saka's discussed. Now Foden in Neto, I'd say, and then a brief nod to Undav, but only briefly, what's left to mention here. I'd say Foden. Now, some people will be thinking about going Mahrez with 8 million, and if you've looked, when he plays, his per 90 stats, they're a thing of wonder, but the Pep Roulette, and I can't fully put my finger on why, but I've had Mahrez in my team before in the past, and I think I've been burned a couple times. And I think some players, when they seem great on paper or in the underlying stats, but you've been burnt before, I think you've got to pay attention to that and just think it's quite a risk. And people think about Sterling leaving and this and that, but I think he could bang, but
I'm massively worried for Foden this year. I do not think he's going to be the FPL option that he has been in the past. I feel like the fact that he can't now play that number 9 spot because they've obviously got a certain Erling Haaland up there for 60, 70 mil or whatever, and the fact that if they don't let Alvarez go on loan, they'll have Alvarez popping around too to play back up forward. It then just leaves Foden with that left wing spot, and I think Grealish has been doing pretty well in pre-season, and it's going to be a rotation job quite a bit with the two of them.
I mean, the one thing with Foden is he does have good XJ and XA and goal and assist just stats. When he plays, he's developing. He's a young player, so he's getting better year on year. And I look at his previous season tallies, and I can see it hopping up a bit each year. And I think next season, that 2,500 minute mark, I mean, perhaps just me, the way I see it is he's a young player. He's very exciting for Man City. He's a young English player, potentially future captain. You can imagine with this trend line, his minutes getting upped again. And, he's developing, and I'm not going to lie, he is more on the periphery of this team. Like, if someone was going to go, he's not 100% nailed. He's in there. I'm not backing him with chest, but currently I'm going with him because I think he can do some things. And you look at these fixtures. That's good fixtures. You've got to have one Man City boy.
Yeah.
Now, I've not got Haaland in my team too, and so Foden being the key into that attack. And if we look at Kane's fixtures, not quite as good, but he is Kane. But again, I could even go with him as Haaland and then switch out Foden. But I don't know if I'd want to go with a Mount. I quite like Mount, but he did overperform a bit. He outscored his XG and XA. I could imagine a little bit of a drop-off, but, he's a very good player too, and, he's fairly nailed because, all these young, exciting players.
He's nailed as it can get in that Chelsea side.
Yeah, I actually think I would It's just, in my view, I'd probably pick 3 or 4 other options at 8 mil before I'd pick Phil Foden.
What I could do,
I mean,
is
you could no. You don't have to even get rid of Kane. How about why even think of the 8 mil midfield bracket? We've just talked about Gabriel Jesus. Why not just switch Undav for Jesus and Foden for a 5.5 or a 5 mil by or something like that? Or yeah, you can go with how you were going to go, Dan. What were you going to do?
what are your thoughts on going with something like
Just restore Kane, maybe.
or something a little like that?
Well, so is the draw of that the fact that you still made your way into the Man City attack? Is that what you're looking to do there?
I mean, I guess with Pep's comments, I actually feel a little more comfortable
With a Kane.
with a Kane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll keep Kane.
But then would you rather have Mount or Gabriel Jesus? got-
Well, I think as well, what you could just do, you could do a straight swap, is you could do, instead of Mount and Kane, you could do Son and Callum Wilson, if that appealed more. I mean, I'm just thinking because Son's up at 12 million.
I'm not tickled by Wilson. I mean, it's a tricky one here. It's one of the things ironing out this team. Like, it's not a,
I think that spot could do with improvement. I think what you could do is, and now I know you don't like Mahrez, but you could just downgrade Undav, who's not going to be in your team anyway. He's a bencher, so you don't really need that 5.5 sitting in him. And you just make Mount Mahrez, because Mahrez...
I think Mahrez is 8 mil this year,
Yeah.
He's 8.5 or 8.
He's 8.
He's 8.
Oh,
Bowen's the only 8.5. I'd rather have Bowen than Foden, like, easily as well.
Mahrez... Yeah. I'd take Mahrez over Foden.
Well, Mahrez is aging. He's 30 years old. Is he really...
It's prime years, man. He's doing good.
But I think he's always in Pep's sort of first choice Champions League lineup, and that's the main. While there's not any Champions League in these first few games, you're getting a wild card early anyway. It's you, Dan. You love an early wild card. Why not just back the Mahrez while you can punt on him?
I mean, he's been playing in pre-season.
He's got an assist in pre-season.
And Sterling has left.
Sterling's left, so that right wing is free.
And Jesus is left.
And Jesus is left.
There is more and it's interesting because we've obviously got 5 subs this year, so you'd be tempted to say the Pep roulette will go crazy, but actually last season he actually made quite a few subs in game. There's numerous games where he wouldn't make a single sub, or he'd maybe just make 1 sub towards the end, which sort of goes against what he's known for in the past. So maybe he will be a little bit more predictable than perhaps he has been in the past.
So do you reckon Mahrez will get more game time than Foden this season?
I don't know. In the Premier League, I do not think Mahrez will.
Just don't pick either of them. I hate players that don't play football for me. That's why Saka's better than them both massively, because he'll at least play for sure.
Yeah.
And Mount as well. Maddison, even I'd probably pick Maddison ahead of Foden or Mahrez.
Maddison overperformed his stats quite a bit last season.
But the allure with these players, Joe, is that you're literally getting a player for the top side in the Premier League. I mean, you could even go Luis Diaz. I don't know why we've not spoken about that.
Yeah, of course.
8 mil, Liverpool forward.
Diaz is better than all of this.
But I think a lot of people are just thinking that Jota's Jota, he's a good player. He's
injured.
He's injured, Dan. He's injured right now.
He's injured?
Yeah.
He's injured. So, and it's going to be, I think Klopp said it's going to be a rush to get him back ready for the start of the season. So, or it's going to be tight or something along that line. So why not, just go with Diaz, and there you go.
And even still, like Diaz towards the back end of last season, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he played the vast majority of the games in the Premier League after he came in. So Klopp backs him. and he was electric. So I think he's probably my second 8 mil pick after Saka.
Yeah.
I will root into that City attack, obviously with those fixtures, and I mean he pulled the start up early down. Was it 2.66 goals per game at home and 2.01 away? Like, if you're going to count on there being at least 2 goals in their games, you ideally want one of their attacking players. But it's just predicting which one of them is going to play is just struggle week by week with that.
There's a lot of value at that 8 mil spot, and I think it comes down to really the top 3 being Saka, Mount, and Mahrez. And it's not Mahrez, sorry, Diaz. And it's just splitting the 3 of them and seeing.
Mount, that is a player. Mount's been doing very well. Like, he did well in the Champions League, and he is nailed. So maybe.
What's their fixtures attacking wise? So Everton at home. So Everton at Goodison Park are pretty good.
They've been crap in pre-season. They are a bit rubbish.
They are crap, but I just think it. I mean, it's a good game. It is a good game. I don't like that. But Frank Lampard against the Chelsea boys, anything could happen. And then Conte Spurs, I think is a very tough game. I put that in red. I wouldn't even put that in grey. Especially for an out of form Chelsea.
Then have been a bit rubbish.
Then it picks up Leeds, good. Leicester, good. Southampton, good. West Ham, meh.
There's goals in the game. West Ham, they can score.
I mean, we are talking about Chelsea, so all these fixtures should be green for them. They're a top 4 side. But I do think Mount. I think Mount is a much better pick than Foden. A miles better pick than Foden.
Yeah, in my view as well, I reckon.
Yeah, so I'll come in for now. Perisic I will need to review. He could potentially go to cash, and I could even spread that 0.5 somewhere else. Neto, he's an enabler. I was actually looking at Trossard at one point, but Neto is like the same kind of stats as in underlines, but he's 1 million cheaper. And a lot of people in the FPL community are looking at this this kind of season here. Because he was injured then. So if you get something like this for 5.5 mil, that's great value. And, he's cheap. That's his primary function.
He's been all right in pre-season as well, I think. Has he got a couple of goals maybe? Or am I making...
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say about his goals in pre-season is they have come against some really shit opponents. Like, I think it's Deportivo and whatever. They've got some tough games to actually come. So I would keep an eye on Neto and Wolves. And
I guess just to touch back on Perisic, one thing I'm kind of trying to rely on for him is that at the start of the Premier League, there's less fixture congestion. So, but we'll see. He's under review. And then Undav, he did well in the Belgian league. Right, of course. Mopai's a bit shit. I mean, he's on the bench. Might do.
But do you not think it's a waste of a mil to have a bench?
Million, yeah.
Yeah, but I've been burnt. I've been burnt many times by having an inadequate bench and having starting 10. So I don't want to completely,
But isn't a whole million worth it just for 2 points or whatever it is?
Yeah, but he might even be all right at one point in the season.
Yeah,
for Neto,
I think you've just not got to forget, Dan, that you have got an early wild card to use this year, a guaranteed early wild card around. I always look personally at Gameweek 5. That's where the wild card for 2 seasons in the past, and it's done me well.
I mean, I might even go with Undav to some bench fodder and then go from Perisic to, a Chilwell or
even a
I
Diaz.
Or a Robertson, or even like a Diaz, because City have very good fixtures. But that's the gist of my team.
Yeah, nice. I mean, you could,
I think
squeeze a Robertson in.
Saka, Salah, Neto, I'm really happy with. Kane, he's Premier League proven. James Trent can sell a pretty template. Trippier, I back him. Perisic on review. Henderson, I think, will do well overall. And Mount's pretty solid, so I'm not against him here making that change. And then,
right.
On the bench. But
should I start sharing my screen?
There you go.
Right. Is that all good? So, let me go to... I've prepared a few drafts here, actually. Let me get rid of this. And let me go to the first one. So, this is basically the spine of all my drafts. They will all have Trent, Cancelo, Salah, Leon Bailey, Kane, and Jesus. I think I stick by that spine, whatever happens. I think most of these guys will be in my game week 1 starting 11. If not, well, guaranteed all of them. The only one I doubt is if I've got more money to spend and I can upgrade a Bailly to someone better or more guaranteed in the long run. So I'll move on to this first one. So what I've gone for with this first one is I've gone with the 2 premiums of Salah and Kane. I've then gone for a defence of those 2 nailed boys, and I've gone for Robertson to get that triple Liverpool.
Wait, Baron, do you want to do the explaining each one, word by word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in goal I've got Ramsdale and Steele. Then I've got Trent, Cancelo, Robertson, James on the pitch, and my bench defender as Botman. I've then got Salah, Leon Bailly from Aston Villa, Neto, Andres Pereira from Fulham, and Colback and Andres Pereira being my bench boys. And then my front 3, I've got Anthony Martial, Kane, and Gabriel Jesus. So going back to where I was, I've gone for the triple Liverpool in both wing-backs, or both full-backs, and Salah. I've then got Cancelo, who's nailed. I've got Ramsdale, who's at 5 mil, a top 6 keeper. I think Arsenal are pretty good, and he gets a lot of saves. He can, as in, I feel like in a game where they're defensively pressured, he will make saves, even if he loses the clean sheet. It's almost like a relegation sort of type keeper there, where he'll get saves if they're doing shit.
It's interesting you've gone Ramsdale over Mendy, considering the same price, and Chelsea.
I
clean sheet.
don't back Chelsea at all at the start of the season. The reason that Reece James is highlighted here is because he's actually on the cross of I don't want him in my team. The only reason he's here is because I've got 6 mil to play with, and it feels almost like a waste or just a risk to go against Reece James if all those people that have got a Chelsea defender in their team. I think if I've got the money for him, I've got to just keep him and see how it goes. I'm not.
So how come you're not feeling Chelsea at the minute? Just to explain to the viewers.
I mean, they've lost Rudiger. They've lost their backup defender in Christensen. They've then, we're potentially switching to a back 4, I think it is, of James at right back, Thiago Silva, who's 38, I think he is now, and Koulibaly, who's just come in, and we don't know what he's going to be like Brent-wise. And then left banker Chilwell, that's returning from injury, so minutes are going to be eased slowly throughout the start of these first few game weeks, and a dodgy Alonso who can't play in a back 4 to save his life.
Tuchel's words as well have been very discouraging. Like, he's basically just saying, yeah, we're crap, we're way off it. I really don't think we'll be ready for the start of the season. Which isn't. I mean, he's probably saying it to motivate his players a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not what you want to hear realistically, though. I think I remember reading on Reddit the last couple of days that Chelsea will have a bad pre-season, or just like in the past they've done it before and they've turned up early on in the season. Whether that's something that's just it's a load of nonsense, or whether it's something which you should reflect on and think, well, maybe it doesn't really matter having a crap pre-season.
Weirdly, I agree with that logic, because I feel like, thinking back to the past, I feel like Chelsea do turn up in the games they need to turn up in, and in the games that they don't really give a shit about, and you'd expect them to sort of cruise or do all right. When you just think Chelsea are doing all right, then they just drop a stinker. It's when they're under the cosh. It's almost like how when Southampton just go through a patch of like, God, Ralph Hasenhüttl's going to get the sack, and then suddenly they turn into everything you need. Everyone's got to get a Broja and a Che Adams in their team. But I do think I do agree with that. They could just magically turn it around. They've done it before.
So do you think that Chelsea are more likely to be doing well in attack or defence, or are they equally a worry for both attack and defence?
In the past, I would have said I always would back their defence more than I back their attack, but weirdly, I think recently I'm back their attack more than I back their defence, which is a reason why I don't really worry for Reece James being in my team if I was to keep him, because he's so crucial to both. I think we need him to help our attack, so he's not going to really be rested much. I don't think Aspilicueta is a valid substitute. I think the only issue for James is where he's playing in that back four, and then if they do switch to the back three like they usually do, because they can't cope with the back four, whether he slots in at centre back or right wing back.
Aspi might get a transfer away as well, so that could reduce
the Barca.
Yeah, that could reduce his competition out there.
But then that could potentially is that going to reduce James's appearance in games where we want him to appear in? I don't know. Could he be rested for the odd?
Well, yeah, rested for the easier ones, which you want to dominate and get big holes in. I mean, yeah, personally, my history with Reece James is really quite bad. I just don't like him very much, but it's quite difficult to not have him because a lot of people do at this stage in the season, and he could come out with a monster 20-pointer, which you just can't afford to not have him for. So
I mean,
I don't like him.
I famously backed Reece James from day one, genuinely from day one of Reece James, from before he'd made his debut for Chelsea. I'd backed him, and I've been following Reece James for a long time. He's an excellent footballer. I put him up there as second right back in the league to Trent, easy. Cancelo.
Jeez, you think he's worse than Trent?
I think right wing back he's top. I don't think Trent can beat him as a right wing back. But as right back, I'd say he's second. I'm putting Cancelo at left back. And yeah, I just think James is hard to avoid. Even in pre-season, he got an assist immediately when he came on the pitch. But he also scored an own goal. So he's just out and about, isn't he?
He gets carded as well a bit. He doesn't mind a card. He got an own goal in the Prem, I think, last season as well.
Yeah, he got a few 0-pointers.
So erratic. I don't like it.
He got a red card for me when he was on the goal line for Liverpool. I signed him up in Gameweek 3, I think it was, before everyone else got on him, and he got a red card. But then he also came back and got a 21-point haul for me. So, that still balances out to a 10-point average per game. So, anyway, let's talk about that defensive spot is up for grabs by anyone. It could be Doherty. I think I prefer more than a Perisic, personally, for me. So it could be a Doherty, and then I play with the 1 mil elsewhere, whether that's making Botman, whoever, or I don't know, just sticking it in Bailly to someone or Martial, whatever. It's a mil that I've got. I back Doherty more because of his minutes, but then it's Jed Spencer that's come in.
He doesn't like Spence, or at least he said Spence was a signing the club wanted to make rather than he wanted to make. So it remains to be seen how many minutes rather that Spence will get. But yeah, no, Doherty's probably first choice. I think he could be quite.
I do think Doherty's first choice, because also Conte. I think Conte has to trust his wing backs, and Jed Spence will have to earn Conte's trust. It won't be just immediate. Oh, you've been signed, you're great. And especially hearing that if he's not Conte's signing, then I will probably go into the season with Doherty in my team. The question is whether that is in exchange for someone else. Could I maybe shave some money elsewhere to try and get Botman up to... Well, I mean, I could actually just do Neto to a 4.5 and then Botman up to Reece James. And
you got a mil in the bank as well.
Yeah, so I'd play. So what would I do here? Maybe I even keep Neto if I can do.
From Bailly to Martinelli. What would your thoughts on that be?
Bailly to Martinelli, I could do that, and that would cover the fact that Saka is obviously a damage to my rank massively right now. He's the one that I'm missing from this team. Yeah, that could be good coverage. To be honest, I don't massively. I'm not. That's quite a decent shout. But I just do think the form that Bailly's in right now, I don't really want to lose him in a weird way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing too. If your 5 million option can perform just as well as a 6 million option, then they've got the value for money on their side, which means in theory, if you have 1 million free, you should be able to use that at least somewhere to improve on the current options, because that's why FPL price it as they are. So, you've got to think of points per million as well as just points overall. Because if you're boosting your value everywhere on the pitch, that's how you get the maximum points.
I just look at those first two games while Bailly is currently in the form he's in, and I just think he will get a goal or an assist. I think he will get an attacking return. Martinelli, I could probably also say the same for. And Martinelli is more long term at that point. I mean, he's got a good first 8 fixtures there. I mean, a very good first 8. Whereas obviously Bailly's do drop off for a point. They're a big point actually.
But he's down at 5 million by Bailey. You can't ask too much of him.
I mean, what's Neto's? Neto's got good fixtures as well. I mean, they've all got the odd dodgy game, but they are
fixtures for Neto.
They're good. So it then maybe comes into, maybe I try and get like a proper Reece James in there, or someone else that I can in that defender slot, and rotate them with Bailly and Neto for when they went into that dodgy patch of form. Dodgy patch of fixtures. I can rotate them out, but also by game week 3 I'll have transfers in the bank. I'll be able to make these switches at the time. I think I want to look at the first few fixtures in isolation and make a team for them. Right, let's look at the next draft rather than playing around with this and see what we've got here. So this was obviously a Kane and Salah draft, no Haaland. This next draft has all 3 of them.
Oh.
So we've got the spine that we wanted to keep. So we've kept Trent, we've kept Cancelo, we've kept Gabriel Jesus, we've kept Bailly, we've kept Salah, we've kept Kane, we've kept Haaland introduced as we come here. The sacrifices that we make are literally just in these 2 positions. We've traded a Robertson and whoever that fourth, so basically Robertson and James for Ben White and Diego Dalot. Which
would you not
obviously
consider going with a Tomiyasu rather than a White?
I think Tomiyasu might be injured right now, so White is filling in at right back. I mean, if I knew Tomiyasu was back and fit, then I'd go Tomiyasu. But
I think Tomiyasu's just unfit. I don't know if he's injured.
Yeah. I don't want to take the risk with a player not playing, so I'd rather just keep White and know that he's going to churn out a 6 if he can here and there. And especially if he's playing right back while Tomiyasu is out, that's even more of an appeal in terms of bonus points, just progressive passes, etc. What do you think about? This is our first threemium draft. We've got the Kane, Haaland, and Salah all in one.
I think a big thing before this FPL season, people are saying there's a lot of value at the back, especially in terms of the points per million and things. So this is obviously sacrificed in this draft for the want of a better forward. But no, I've definitely wrestled with threemium drafts such as this one. And I think it's a decision that's got to be made for a lot of FPL managers. It's tricky.
I mean, if we think that Haaland might not make the first few games, there's no reason to not go with the previous draft and then to just take a hit at like game week 3 and bring in Haaland. You just make that sub from, Martial up to Haaland, Robertson down to White, and another Reece James down to Dalot.
Bit of a hit though. Oh, well, when Haaland comes in, it could be after a few weeks, but he's got transfer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a shout, but you don't. You're not banking in the transfer. I suppose you're leaving it as an option.
You're leaving it as an option if you think that Haaland is gonna cause you issues, but it does. Yeah, you're hoping that you're not going to get injuries from elsewhere or problems like a Bailly not starting anymore. Yeah. But then that's when someone like a Neco Williams, who's your reliable 4 mil right wing back, comes in to cover for him.
I think another thing that's good about this draft, which some 3-man drafts are suffering, is that it actually has a bench which plays. You know, I mean, with Neco Williams and Andreas Pereira, I remember early on, if you wanted, what I was struggling with is when, you know, you'd have to sacrifice by going cheaper in defence, and so you won't be able to, you know, have guaranteed starters, or you need to go cheap up front, and, you know, then you're stuck with like a Greenwood or something, but you've found a nice balance here. I think this is quite a good one.
Yeah, and I think this keeps boys that are needed to be kept, like a Gabriel Jesus.
Which could easily make this possible is the double up of the Neto and the Bailly. We've got two very budget players who, you know, could have some real value to them, particularly at the start of the season. And I think ultimately that's what really helps make this draft be possible without being like starved in one area noticeably.
Yeah, no, this is, I think, these two are key to it, because obviously this bench is basically what you're going to go for, whatever happens. I mean, this is the cheapest bench you can get, basically, and this is the cheapest playing. All of these players are going to get some minutes. I think you've also got options in. There's a Patterson that's playing for Everton. He's also at 4 mil.
Yeah,
and he's started a few games.
Yeah,
he could be an option. Actually, contrary to other people's belief, I don't like having Greenwood as your 4.5 mil striker if you are going for a 4.5 mil striker. I do think he's not going to get any minutes at all come the start of the season.
Okay.
And I just think, because I think you've got many people ahead of him in the pecking order, I don't think he's there to get any minutes. I mean, you're hoping for just the 5 subs for him to make one sort of 5-minute appearance, but I think you're looking at quite a young Leeds team that don't need to make necessarily many.
You've got Moreno, you've got Gelhardt, you've got Bamford. You know,
got Rodrigo even. Yeah, I guess he's
ahead of him
to get some minutes towards the back end of last season. You know, roughly. I mean, Gelhardt got a few more, but not masses more. I mean, so I don't think there's a better 4.5 attacker, though. I do agree with you. If you can have.
I think there is a better 4.5
midfielders are more likely to get minutes than Greenwood is.
I think Archer for Aston Villa is a much better choice, because I think the issue with Greenwood is that everyone is going for Greenwood. So Archer's ownership is 3.4. If we look for Greenwood, his ownership is 26%, right? I think there's going to be a lot of people that then wildcard out, know that Greenwood's not getting any minutes, potentially jump onto an Archer or change to a 3.0, and then you've lost 0.1 mil. It's not a risk worth taking for a 4.5er when you may as well save that money and just go with someone you know is not going to play or could potentially play in the Archer at 3% and just stick with it. I mean, he got 3 points last season, which is nothing. But I mean, I just think he's getting minutes in pre-season, and he's just.
To be honest, I don't know exactly how the price drops work. Is it not like a fractional sort of thing? So even if someone like an Archer were to lose a certain percent of his 3.4% ownership, he'd still get a price drop rather than it being loads of people own Greenwood. So even if some of them get rid of him, he's definitely going to go down. Like, is it not a fractional sort of job?
I don't know how it works entirely. I don't think anyone really does, but I think it's quite. I think the high ownership players are more likely to suffer from.
Yeah, I think they are.
Price drops,
from a mass
price rises.
Yeah. Whereas
ownership increases volatility.
What you've got to think is the few percent of people who've got Archer are likely just probably not really think about it. It's just some shit player, so they're not expecting anything. These 26% of people to get Greenwood. Some of them thinking, maybe he can do something. If he turns out to just be a dog bench fodder option, a few people jump ship, and then you got to worry about if you were fine to keep him. It's like, oh shit, now I've just lost 0.1 mil of value in my team because I've got a price drop.
Some of them might think he's Mason Greenwood.
Yeah. As much as we can avoid the Greenwood surname, I guess we try to. Yeah, otherwise you've got to keep saying you've got Greenwood in your team and people will question you.
Let's have a look at your third draft then.
Right, what is the third one? So, I think this third one has gone for a bit of balance in terms of it's tried to get a big on City, but in a different way, as in it's tried to replace Haaland for a City defender in Diaz, and it's avoided Bailly because Bailly is the one that could potentially be sacked off after those first 3 games, and it's gone for like a Trippier and integrated a Rashford. I don't really like this draft now I've seen the other 2. I don't really think it's worth focusing on.
I like the start. Well, I quite like it. What don't you like about it?
I just don't like it compared to the other ones. I think it's a good draft.
What are your thoughts on Diaz and Robertson as like how worth it they are to go for?
Well, I mean, everyone is going to have these 2. That ownership is going to be 90-something%, and that ownership is going to be 90-something%. I'm talking in the top.
Yeah.
Top even 500k probably. It's these 2 that you need, and if you're backing these 2, then you may as well back these 2. Because
I have question marks over his minutes though. I guess Laporte's not fit yet.
Well, I was thinking actually what I could do, now I'm here, is that what I would do is if I knew that he was nailed, I'd go for Zinchenko.
Yeah.
And then I'd do Ramsdale to Edison. Because then you've also opened up 0.5 mil to use, and I think that's pretty much equivalent in the terms of how Diaz currently is an injury risk, but I think both Diaz and Laporte are an injury risk. So then you're having questions. I think one of them will start, and it'll most likely be Diaz. But going forward, if I knew that Zinchenko had either claimed that left back spot, or when he's not in left back is going to play CM or something, then Zinchenko comes in for me.
Personally, I don't back Zinchenko, even if he does make, because I think the kind of passing he's going to do isn't going to be assist creating passing. I think he's going to be breaking lines, but it's going to be assist of an assist or part of the preamble. I don't think he'll be that, exciting of an asset in my view anyway, because I don't think that's the kind of role he'll take up.
I just think he's pretty good on the ball, and I think the fact that Arsenal have actually gone out and picked him, they've gone out and thought we need him for our system, or he will suit our team or our system, is worth it more than whatever we think, as in they know their team inside out, and Arteta knows their system more than anything, so they've picked him for a reason. They've paid the 30-something million, whatever he is. And obviously Arteta knows Zinchenko from when he was assistant manager at City. He's already scouted him. Like, Edu has signed off on it. It'll be a move that they want to make and they want to play him. So I think I just trust that they've signed him for a reason, and I put him in the team.
That's fair. I think as well at 5 million, especially considering you've already got Trippier there, the choice is, I wouldn't say scarce, but I think Zinchenko is a good one that's left.
I mean, actually, after the conversation we just had, I wouldn't have Trippier in there. I'd have Matt Doherty. I back Doherty over Trippier. I just think Conte is
Cash potentially. What do you make of it?
I think Cash is good, but when you look at those fixtures there, I don't want Cash for that ha-ha. I'd just be laughing. It wouldn't be worth it. I mean, a West Ham are a top 6 team. Arsenal, again, I think we've talked about their attackers throughout. City, we don't need to talk about. And Leicester, if they're going to get in it.
Yeah,
I feel like a Leicester game always starts 1-1.
They're better at attacking than defending.
and by that point, I guess you're looking at wildcarding anyway. But so yeah, you're not really looking at this. But yeah, you've got cash for those three. But is it worth it compared to West Doherty's? It's just a nice bunch of opening 5 or 6. You've got that Chelsea game, but that's a London derby, and ideally, I mean, the fact that it's so tight defensively isn't a bad thing. I mean, we've talked about how Chelsea are a bit of a shambles right now anyway, so that could be actually a decent game for Doherty and Conte to hit them.
Yeah, I think that could be one of those weird games where Spurs win like 4-0 or something. You know what I mean?
Which one?
You know, Chelsea are in disarray. Spurs come through. They're weirdly ruthless against a big team. I think that could happen.
As a Chelsea fan, I'm not backing that. I'm not just going to sit here and go.
That scoreline actually is, and then we'll.
Oh yeah.
Prediction. We'll
we'll
flip this up after fucking Chelsea dick them 3-1 away.
So no, I'm a big backer of Spurs this season. You wouldn't be able to tell it from. I mean, Dan, I know you mentioned this as well. You won't be able to tell it from my team. I think there's a severe lack of Spurs in there, but I actually really back them to rival the big boys. I think they could be a very good third place, but rough up Man City and Liverpool.
To be fair, I do think Perisic at the start of the season, because you're less likely to get rotated at the start of the season than in the thick of it, because there's less fixture congestion. So I guess part of me's thinking, there's no real reason for Conte to be so ruthless, especially substituting him before like the 60th minute or something. So, I mean, again, that's high risk, high reward, I guess.
But I think Perisic, Dan, you've just got to go with if he's even. You've got to just look at pre-season games and see if he starts to get eased into the team properly.
Well, yeah,
and plays a full game
in its pre-season. Why? I think potentially, because I do have a slot in my midfield, as we were discussing that before, like that. Foden, Mount, Morris. I could go for a Jesus based on. I'm more pulled towards Jesus now because his pre-season's been good, and I think it's like how last year, like Ben Rama had a good pre-season, and then he did real well the first couple of game weeks. Players can glide from the pre-season into a good start to the season, and Jesus. I think it's very reasonable that he could do that because he has had a good pre-season.
Do you back?
Yeah,
sorry. Do you back? This is a question I want to know. Is what I'm thinking now is I've got 0.5 mil, right? And I'm just looking at my weak thinkers probably being Marcus Rashford, right? Do I back? Who do you guys back more out of Anthony Martial or Marcus Rashford? Because they've both got different points for them. Martial is up top and is the striker in that squad. And obviously there's big questions around Ronaldo right now and whether he's going to stay and whether he's come to training and all of this sort of stuff. The fact that he's not played any of pre-season indicates that Martial is, probably 99% nailed to start the first few games of the season. And Martial's scored a lot and is in form, and it's just a good option if Ronaldo then ends up leaving the squad. I don't know if I trust Rashford as much as I trust Martial.
I see that actually. I think that is there's a point to be made there. It's just a case of if you have built the rest of your team and you find yourself with 6.5 in the middle there, I think Rashford is the fairly clear choice. I think if you're gonna bounce between a Rashford and it's tough. It's tough.
I mean, okay. So would you rather have Jesus and Rashford or Saka and Martial? I mean, they're both in this situation.
I mean, yeah, I'd want Saka in my team anyway, so I'd probably want Saka and Martial.
Right. So.
Saka over Jesus, and you'd hope that Martial covers the Jesus.
Probably, I
don't think Martial will cover Jesus, but obviously there's a reason Martial's cheaper.
And then how about? I probably wouldn't. And then could even.
That's the thing. The thing with Jesus is, like, because he's not an elite finisher. But how much of a problem is that going to be? You know, is he going to be one of these frustrating players? You know.
Yeah, and there is the argument, and I mean, I remember you mentioned that youngster Barham who just picked players based off he thought if they were good, you know, if he liked them when he was watching them play. Like Jesus would not pass the I think they're really quite good test. Yeah, and
how do you compare? How do you rank the likes of Foden, Mahrez, Mount, Jesus, and we'll even go Bowen, but taking into account that Bowen's 0.5 million more.
So Luis Diaz is personally.
Oh yeah, and Diaz. We'll throw Diaz into that. The 8 million bracket, because I'm personally having real debate issues.
I think if you put in Saka in there because he's the most nailed, Jesus is as nailed, if not more nailed than Saka is, in my eyes. Because Saka's obviously got competition with Smith Rowe / Martinelli if Martinelli goes over or Saka comes left, whatever. And Jesus maybe has the rotation with Nketiah. But I think when they've actually played, they've not rotated in pre-season. They've either played two up top and Jesus has sat next to Nketiah. I think Jesus is basically vital to that system. I just think Jesus comes in, maybe as you say, after Saka, or basically with Saka, they're in the same team. There's going to be goals. It's either going to be one or the other, I presume. It's just then my question comes down to who's on penalties and whether... I mean, Lacazette stepped off of penalties and Saka went on to penalties. Now Jesus is in. Is it just a tradition of the number 9 takes the penalties and maybe Jesus takes them back off, or there are a club that shares them between Martinelli, Saka and Jesus, whoever wins it takes it. Then Mount as being the talisman of Chelsea are back, and Diaz obviously I've spoken about. I think the others that you mentioned just
how do you
them.
compare Mount to Diaz? Mount or Diaz? What are you saying on that debate?
Mount will get more minutes, but he's debatably less explosive than a Diaz. I think it's. I mean, people. The wider FPL community, I think, are backing a Diaz more than a Mount. I think, he just came in and was just really quite good, and he's likely to get minutes, especially with Jota not being particularly fit.
Do you guys not worry about this? I mean, if I go to ownership right now, look at that, 63%. You don't worry about a 63% owned Jesus.
Jesus will probably be
overall. That's not even like. He's more owned than Trent and Cancelo.
Well, I mean, maybe that's.
He's the most owned player in the game. Salah is owned less than Gabriel Jesus.
Yeah,
that
won't be a case for the whole season.
That won't be a case for the whole season. I mean, unless he's just. We've spoken about how he's completely undervalued there, and if 63% of players in this game are picking this guy, do we not think he's worth also picking? I mean, Saka's 17% owned. There's a reason that people are going for Jesus. I mean, it could be pre-season syndrome. It's like how Werner was incredibly owned before we actually saw what he came up with. But I mean, I'd still rather back him than not back him. I worry about 60% of players on this game.
It's important to get off to a good start, I think, as well in FPL. Because then you're not chopping and changing your team if you're quite low down in the ranks early on. I think that's a fear that gets everyone.
Actually,
I like Jesus. I think I'd rather have Jesus ahead of all of the 8 million midfielders that aren't Saka. I'd say.
I mean, what have I just done? So you'd have Jesus ahead of all of the 8 million midfielders like Saka. So how about this team? This is actually within. This is within bank. This is 100 mil. We can get Jesus, Saka, Kane, Salah, Neto. Then you've got Trent, Cancelo, Robbo, Zinchenko, Doherty, and Mendy. That's just a...
I mean,
everyone here is a top 6 side except from Neto.
How do Arsenal and Chelsea's fixtures compare?
How do Arsenal and Chelsea's fixtures
compare? Now I'm debating in my head between Jesus and Mount. Obviously, they are both 8 million. So,
So, let's go down to the fixture ticker, actually. Why don't we just do that? So, we've got game week 1. We've got Arsenal here playing Crystal Palace and Chelsea playing Everton. Both away from home. Both sort of roughly the same sort of fixture, I'd say. I think that's a tough game for Arsenal, Crystal Palace, and I think Everton, with the Lampard and how Chelsea are a bit shit right now, that could also be as the same level as Palace is. We've then got Tottenham for Chelsea and Leicester for Arsenal. Probably lead towards Arsenal. Bournemouth, Fulham and Villa. Leeds,
Yeah, I mean, I guess the
Southampton.
thing is, Jesus can be quite an explosive player. Like, wasn't there one game last season towards the back end when he got 4 goals?
Yeah.
And you could imagine against a Bournemouth, Fulham, or even like a Villa, you can see with the form he's in pre-season, you can see against the Bournemouth he gets a hat-trick. And
I don't know if necessarily he's explosive. I do think he might be a form player, though. I think when he's in a rut and you dodge him. But when he's starting to pick up, and I think he's got confidence behind him from pre-season. I mean, he chipped Mendy yesterday. You've got to be feeling good and feeling confident.
yeah, it could be like Ben Rama last season.
Yeah.
He's been touted as a bit of a form player, and he had a good pre-season, and then he got double-digit hauls in the game week 1 and 2, and so yeah, I guess you've got to consider that, especially with Chelsea having a bad pre-season and potentially being in a bit of a rut. Maybe in towards the thick of the season, Mount is performing better than Jesus, but you've got to jump on trends before it becomes a bandwagon. And yeah, I guess if you can, you can see how Jesus would hit the ground running, and especially if you were to go with a Foden or a Mahrez, you could be left with them on the bench. You get a 1-pointer because they come on in the 80th minute. Meanwhile, Jesus is turning up because he's just hit the ground running on form. I guess you can kind of see that.
The only change I would make to this team is so I like everyone here except from Zinchenko and Mendy, because I spoke about Chelsea's fragilities at the back. And actually, but looking at the fixtures, they're not bad. I mean, I don't think they're not going to keep a clean sheet. They're a top 6 side. Tuchel will focus on defence before he'll focus on attack. And Mendy is just a very good keeper that can make extremely good saves anytime you need it. So at least you're getting those sort of potential. Like, think about that game when Chelsea were crap and basically it was Mendy against Brentford.
Everyone thinks about the Brentford game, but I also think about the Real Madrid game.
But
Mendy's inconsistent. He's not great. I don't like him that much.
There is Pope at that same price bracket.
I don't think
royalty in the past
you go Edison, and then you just get your 0.5 from Ben White. I think Ben White is just a very good 4.5 mil option, and there you've got triple Arsenal for these 5 games. I mean, even if you dodge the United game, then you've got these 2.
And United might not even be a bad game. We don't really know how they'll be at that stage.
And if they're starting to flop, then you just jump to any other 4.5er.
Back to Martial's in Rashford's.
You could go for a Dallo. I mean, yeah, we've just slagged off United a bit, but he's going to be their starting right back. He's attacking. It's Ten Hag ball. We don't know what it's going to be like, but it looks good in pre-season, and those are also good.
I've just clocked that Man United's game week 1 fixtures against Brighton. I can't pick Dallo or Rashford now. This doesn't feel right.
Never back against Brighton.
Never ever back against Brighton.
Right, away from that stupidity of that phrase.
Do you want to explain that phrase? Considering no one.
Yeah, in my FPL, Brighton are the absolute day of my life. Anytime I think I've captained a player against Brighton, even when Brighton have been bang out of form, I think it might have been Grealish, either last season or the season before. Grealish was on an absolute hot streak. He was doing brilliantly well. Brighton, absolutely poo. And Grealish was playing against Brighton, and I was like, right, I'm going to captain Grealish. All the other options are a bit rubbish. And then Brighton, I can't remember what the result was, but I think Grealish got like a 1-pointer. And there's just lots of mini tales like that of me just thinking, right, come on, do in Brighton. And then Brighton have just pulled something out of the bag out of nowhere. So, I never ever bet against Brighton. They're the absolute bane of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah,
they're just the amplification, of a mid-table team. Like, they can literally just either pull out form patches or just be
they're
shit.
quite good defensively, Brighton too, and they're quite good for XG.
Yeah.
Like on XG tables, like it's like if XG was actual goals, Potter'd be, he'd be celebrating, he'd be pouring the champagne showers. But he has Mopai up front, which
I do think
I kind of backed an undav potentially, just as a 5.5 on the bench, because I could see some games it's like, oh, hold on, Neto's a bit out of form, or he's got a tough fixture. It's like, oh, hold on, let's chuck on an undav. But,
I do think this year, I mean, I say this every year, I mean, Potter has not progressed Brighton at all, I don't think.
Finished ninth last season.
Ninth, okay, actually.
And they have lost Basuma, the CDM.
They've lost Basuma.
Yeah, he's got
They have lost
Spurs.
Basuma. Yeah, actually, Basuma to Spurs. Is that even going to shore? That's going to shore Spurs up defensively again, isn't it? That's just another. I think we've just got to forget. Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say, Brighton. Obviously, we're not going to go there. But I mean, if they do, I think this season could be one where they progress. But when we've got these players at this price that they are, like literally, look, this is a full squad of top 6. I did not think when I was going into the new season that I'd have Edison in goal, but I can afford it.
Here you are. Who would have thought?
Shall we wrap this up, fellas? I think we've been going on for a little while now.
Yeah. I would just say, though,
some kind of bow, like some kind of overarching,
that if we look at the FPL.team predicted points, this is 50, the other one was 50, and this one was 53.
You know what we could do? Just to wrap it up, we should each say something that after this discussion we've now left with food for thought that we didn't before going into it.
Okay.
We can start. Oh, right, you, Baron, go on.
Yeah, we may as well, because I'm still here. I think my food for thought is I've got to somehow work Saka into my team, and that can't be at the expense of Gabriel Jesus. I think I've got to have Gabriel Jesus because he's the most owned player in the game, and I don't want to go in without that person. And I mean, what's Haaland's ownership? Oh God, God's sake. I mean, Haaland's also very highly owned. But yeah, I've just got to somehow wiggle in a Saka and keep a Jesus because they're just good players. Haaland's shit with Pep Guardiola right now about whether he starts or not, so I don't know if I'll have him for game week 1. That sort of depends on Community Shield this weekend. But yeah, my food for thought is getting in Saka. And I think the top draft I've landed on is that final one there where it's literally all top 6 sides except from just Neto sitting there in the middle of it all.
Nice. I'll go next. I think what I've sort of stewed on as time's gone by is I don't like Rashford that much anymore, and I also realised that I don't like Reece James very much. So I think what I could do is go down from Reece James to a 4.5 defender and up from Rashford to an 8 mil at midfielder. That's feasible. I mean, obviously I've got a lot of playing around to do, but yeah, I think they're 2 points, positions in my team which I'd be happy to change. I think aside from that, roughly I'm quite fond of the structure of my team. Yeah, I think so. They're my main 2 targets. I think those 2 guys.
I'd say for me, I've still got a couple of things to stew on, but I do think I'm much more considering a Jesus. Potentially instead of that, I switched around from Foden or Mahrez or Mount, but is Mount really going to be the one in Chelsea out of form? Yeah, I guess my food for thought is I could just stick a Jesus up top instead of that slot, same price. And I think with being a form player, being good pre-season, high ownership. Just he could bash up a Bournemouth or a Fulham or something. So yeah, I think my main food for is get Jesus, and I might reinvestigate then because I haven't been putting too close attention to the pre-season of Perisic. So if he's not really been starting, I could potentially go for a cash and then use the extra 0.5 mil to go up from a Henderson, who I do back astronomically over the course of the season. But obviously this is pre-wild card. You've got to take fixtures into account. And I could get a Pope or even like a Mendy or someone else. So, but my main food for thought is Jesus is a lot more on my radar now. But yeah.
Lovely. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
that
to be honest,
things quite nicely. We'll go on what you're saying, Bo.
yeah. I was just going to say this is we've done well as it's gone on. I think we were slow at the beginning, but we had some good conversations there towards the end.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, this is our first one as well. I mean, this has gone on longer than I think we'd perhaps like in the future. I think this just isn't digestible for people. This has just sort of become a bit more of a chat as time's gone on. But yeah, that's definitely something we'll look to review, I think, as well as general structure. I mean, we're probably not going to do this particular video again. So yeah, I think that will probably lend to quicker discussions. So yeah, no. Are we got to wrap it all up? Do you reckon?
Yeah.
I think that's
smashing.
pod number one wrapped up.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone who's. I mean, you've definitely not made it this far. Goodness me. But
You've
yeah,
got this far. We could say like a comment summit.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you've made it this far, comment. Barham needs to pick Saka.
BB.
Oh, BB needs to pick Saka.
Yeah, please don't comment there. BB is my name, so I'll only respond to that.
All right, question. Good.
Yep, see ya.
Ta-ra.
Goodbye.